Do you love spy books, movies, and TV? Then the Spybrary podcast is for you. Since 2017, host Shane Whaley and Spybrary field agents around the world dispatch reviews and interviews with authors, historians, and fellow spy fans. We discuss everything from John le Carré, Len Dayton, Paul Viddich, Graham Greene, Mick Herron, Charles Cumming, Ben McIntyre, and many more. Spybrary is available on all good podcast apps and at spybrary.com.
Welcome to episode 200 of Spybrary. Today it is the long-awaited return of the James Bond book club. For those of you not familiar, we record each episode of this book club as if we are in year of publication. Join us today in 1958 as we dig into Dr. No, and come share your thoughts in our online community at spybrary.com/community. Tell us what you think about Dr. No. Hello and welcome to episode 200 of the Spybrary podcast. Today we've got into our Bentley TARDIS. We've gone back to the 50s. There's a new Ian Fleming James Bond book out. To discuss it are our friends here at the James Bond Book Club, Andy Onyx and David Craggs. How are you, gentlemen?
Very good. Very good.
Very well, Shane. Nice to see you again, old chap.
Absolutely. So this is a bit of a shocker because I thought Ian had killed him off. I thought Rosa Klebs had done him with the poison, and that was the end of 007, but he's appeared again.
He has, and that was the first shock. He has appeared again, and he's appeared again in a very different book, I would say. A very different book.
Surprised to see him back, Andy? After From Russia with Love, or
he left it open, and the word was that, I mean, David said last year, didn't he, that he'd already written this, but the word was that Ian would get a bit fed up with 007, and thus he'd been fugued, you know.
Fugu.
So they've diagnosed what Ms. Klebb did to him, according to.
Well, it's always handy to have an expert in tropical poisons at hand when these things happen.
I always say that on a Saturday night out, David.
Absolutely. So luckily for 007, such help was at hand, diagnosed that it was it curare poison? That Rosa had?
Fugu
poison.
Fugu.
Yes, that he'd been fugued. So, the boy is back, and he's back in a bigger and certainly more colourful adventure that we've seen thus far, I would argue.
I'm excited to dig into this one. I'm excited to hear your views on it, but I think, you know, the plot is that two Strangeways and his secretary have gone missing in Jamaica, and Bond gets summoned in to investigate. And what was really interesting for me early doors was M's got a bit of a problem. M's not happy that Bond almost got killed on his last assignment. M's bit of a bastard in this one, isn't he?
Yeah. And he doesn't stop there, does he? He starts messing with his weapon, starts messing with his gun, you know?
He does.
And Bond is not happy with that at all, is it?
So remind me, did the gun jam in From Russia with Love, or I can't quite remember?
Well, did he catch it on his holster? His holster, he wasn't able to draw, was he, or something?
No, I think he caught it in his waistband because he had a silencer on it.
Right.
And, Major Boothroyd, who is a new character in all of this, is summoned in at the meeting at the beginning of the book with Bond to discuss this very point. But I think that the relationship between Bond and Fleming is really changing in this book. You see some friction between the two characters, I would argue. There is friction over the gun episode, which is very interesting. And there's also friction regarding what happened at the end of From Russia with Love. And there is actually friction that M throws onto the fire by insinuating that Bond should go on holiday. So, you know, there's a bit of a bit of animosity building between the two characters, and I thought that was a change of tone in the relationship with them that we've seen. Yeah,
And even with the Doctor, I think the Doctor is saying to M in a private sitting, he's got a little bit of concern about Bond with all this trauma that he's amassing year on year, and M is really kind of, well, he's getting bloody paid, isn't he? You know, he's not really having any of it, is he?
no,
you know?
it's not it's not a kind fatherly response that you get.
Not really.
Not at all. Yeah.
There's the line, I think, from the Doctor. He says that courage is a capital sum reduced by expenditure. All I'm trying to say is that this particular man seems to have been spending pretty hard since before the war. I wouldn't say he's overdrawn, not yet, but there are limits. Don't think that just because nothing's been broken that he hasn't been in real pain. So, you know, the Doctor is trying to explain, like, he's had a rough time. And he has. I mean, we've been reading these books. I mean, he's been battered. I mean, and that's
and he's getting older,
exploits.
isn't he? He's sort of getting into his mid to late 30s. You're healing slower. Yeah.
But it's interesting, actually, on the at the beginning of the book in terms of the gun episode, because evidently what happened was a certain Major Boothroyd wrote to Ian at the time of From Russia with Love, suggesting that his weapon choice for Bond was completely inappropriate. And rumor has it that From Russia with Love had already gone to press. So there wasn't a lot that Ian could do about it, but he was determined to put the thing right in the new book. And hence the reason that he has brought in Major Boothroyd as a character in the story, which I thought was very interesting.
It's a lovely touch, isn't it? I mean, if you're...
It is a lovely touch, yeah. And of course, he accuses Bond of using effectively a lady's gun that's completely inadequate for all of this. And it does actually sort of highlight a bit of a mistake probably on Ian's behalf, because it did from the get-go to seem to be a strange choice. Anyway, Boothroyd now has him properly equipped, but such is Bond's love for this chunk of metal that he tries to sneak out of the office, M's office that is, with the Beretta, which was his original gun. And so it goes on. So I think it introduced a nice sort of technical element to the book, and, you know, it was a further element of realism, if you like. And it's a sort of detail that Fleming seems to be going into that other thriller writers aren't. And I thought it was a good start to the book, a good start.
Yeah,
and he says here, doesn't he? He thought of his 15 years marriage to that ugly bit of metal. He remembered the times its single word had saved his life, the times when its threat alone had been enough. He thought of the days when he had literally dressed to kill, when he had dismantled the gun and oiled it and packed the bullets carefully into the spring-loaded magazine and tried the action once or twice, pumping the cartridges out onto the bedspread in some hotel room somewhere around the world. And the last wipe of a dry rag, and the gun in the little holster, and the pause in front of the mirror to see that nothing showed. And then out of the door on his way to the rendezvous that was to end either in darkness or light. How many times had it saved his life? How many death sentences had it signed? Bond felt unreasonably sad. How could one have such ties with an inanimate object? An ugly one at that, and he had to admit it, with a weapon that was not in the same class as the ones chosen by the armourer. But he had ties, and M was going to cut them.
It's great.
He's a rotter, isn't he, that M?
Yes, it's great stuff. Just to back up, though, before that, one of the things that really got me with this one was the opener with Strangeways at the Kingston club, because I thought that was a beautiful piece of writing, and it really is becoming the sort of narrative and the sort of style that we're expecting from young Ian right now. I felt that he just transported us to Jamaica in a heartbeat. I felt that I was there in this colonial club with these other dignitaries having a drink, etc. And when he left, Strangeways, when he left to make the phone call, which he does every evening to M at the set hour, and he's murdered by these gangsters, these three blind men. I found it completely gripping. It was a tremendous start. And I think the narrative drive and pace that Fleming's putting into this is really, really special. And I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the beginning a lot.
Yeah, it did. I've never been to Jamaica. I know you have, David. So it did kind of help me create that image in my mind of Jamaica, because there was social commentary in there as well as observation. And as we all know, Ian is a huge fan of Jamaica. And there was one piece where he wrote about the club, such stubborn retreats will not long survive in modern Jamaica. One day Queen's Club will have its windows smashed and perhaps be burned to the ground. But for the time being, it's a useful place to find in a subtropical island, well run, well staffed, with the finest cuisine and cellar in the Caribbean. So I liked the whole description. And then it went further. It wasn't just the story of them being murdered. There was a little bit about the workings of being head of a station in the Caribbean. Even a blue call means a bad mark for an agent unless his reasons in writing are unanswerable. London's radio schedules around the world are desperately tight, and their minute disruption by even one extra call is a dangerous nuisance. Strangeways had never suffered the ignominy of a blue call, let alone a red. Of as certain as could be that he never would do so. So it talked about if you don't answer on a first call, what happens. And I like that extra bit of knowledge that Ian throws into this.
Yeah. Fantastic use of technology with this mast at Regent's Park, It's a fantasy, really, to think that we're transmitting all over the world. But I suppose in this day and age, with the wonders of wireless, all things are possible.
That's right. And I liked the authenticity shown from obviously from Ian's experiences throughout the war, that the individual's use of the key is almost as personal as a voice, so that if the station is compromised and someone else is tapping it out, they would know instantly back in London that they've been compromised. Yeah. I thought that was good. That was, he wasn't flying a mahogany bomber there, was he?
No.
But again, what's interesting though, it's kind of that is the undoing of Strangeways, because the assassins know every night at this time he has to be at his radio set, and so he creature of habit. So that's how they take him out, because they know he's coming back. And that's why he has to stop. It's a bridge game, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yes.
And boy, do they take him out. I mean, these are very, very naughty people, aren't they? They're really not messing about.
Oh, it's a cold-blooded assassination.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the characters who appear in this one. So Quarrel makes a return, the Cayman Islander.
Yes. He has a big part in this, as we know, and a very tragic demise. But he picks Bond up at the airport. He's in the story from the moment that Bond arrives to investigate the Strangeways disappearance in Jamaica, in Kingston, and he's. I think that the relationship between Quarrel and Bond is very well described, and they really are quite enamored with each other, and it's a very close relationship. It's
do you think he interchanges seamlessly with Leiter, doesn't he?
Mm.
yes.
You know, there's no difference in the status. They you know, Quarrel knows his way around that part of the world, just like Leiter knows his way around Chicago and New York, doesn't he?
And I think also that what I liked about it was Fleming wrote that Quarrel was an invaluable handyman with all the fine seaman's qualities of the Cayman Islander, and he was a passport into the lower strata of colored life, which would otherwise be closed to Bond. So it's also like, you know, Felix Leiter couldn't have gone into some of these bars and mixed with some of these people in the way that Quarrel could.
Yeah.
Now, it was interesting that on the first, I think it was on the first evening, he takes Bond to a quayside restaurant.
The Joy Boat.
Yeah. Ran by Pussfella. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a sort of entree into the real Jamaica that Bond would have struggled to achieve on his own, that's for sure. And it's also, of course, where they have the interlude with the reporter from the Gleaner,
yes,
which is well described, who's clearly part of the bad team, if you like. Yeah, it's good stuff, gripping.
And as you mentioned, because, you know, we do have spoilers in this episode, that Quarrel joins Bond on their trip to Crab Key, and meets his demise in a very painful manner.
Horrible.
By the dragon.
Yes, well, we needn't be worried about spoiling anything in this one, Shane, because it's actually been, as you probably noticed, it was serialized in the Express since the 19th of March this year. So, you know, the story sort of so people are really probably in advance of us in getting into this story. But
what was interesting was Quarrel is scared of going to Crab Key, right? Because there is a legend around it. You know, people haven't come back. He is someone that is, you know, as the locals are, you know, kind of scared by a lot of this, the legends and the fables. And he actually says to Bond, I have some folks back in the Caymans. Would you consider taking about a life insurance for me before we sail? So he's very worried. And Bond actually does take the life insurance out for him, again, showing how much he has affection for Quarrel. And, you know, we know this is not going to be any picnic. And Quarrel, despite being a big bruiser, a big fighter, you know, he's terrified of going to the island. But he still does because of his affection for 007.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, actually, because it's really a tale of two parts, because you talk about going to the island, but up until then, it really was a spy story in the vein that we've come to expect. And I would argue that it's kind of, for me, it was a novel of two parts. I mean, you have all of the setup with the disappearance of Strangeways, the investigation, the attempts to kill Bond, which were very intriguing, with the poisoned fruit in his hotel.
Oh, and that centipede.
And with the
centipede. Writing? The tension with that writing about the centipede crawling up his body.
Yeah, I mean, it was first class writing. It really was, and he describes sort of fear and horror in a very unique fashion. But I think that after From Russia with Love, which was very Ambler-esque, the first part of Dr. No was in a similar vein. But then, from the moment that after Quarrel has spent some time training Bond up, getting him fit, going through this grueling routine that Quarrel sets him, they set and they have to go to the island, and you hear all about Quarrel's qualms about going to the island because of the rumors that have been circulating locally, the aeroplane that crashed, the people that have gone missing, so on and so forth. there's a big sort of voodoo mystique.
Yes.
A lot of superstition surrounding it.
Superstition surrounding what's going on, and Quarrel is clearly spooked by all of this. And I think that from the moment they get in that boat and the moment they set sail from for Crab Key, the book really changes and morphs into very much a sort of action adventure story in the mold of Rider Haggard's, John Buchan, Sax Romner is a big influence with Fu Manchu. You know, I mean, you can see that in the villain that we'll come to talk about in a minute, the erstwhile Dr. No. But the book really morphs into a big adventure set piece, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, nobody can accuse young Ian of repeating himself with these books because they're all proving to be really quite different in different ways.
Do you think he got carried away though, David? Because I agree with you, there are two parts to the story. I liked the first. The second one on the island, I had some issues with. There was parts of it I liked, but overall I'm like, okay, this is a very different read from the previous books.
It is a different read. I mean, I think there are aspects in common probably with maybe Live and Let Die a little bit, but he really opens up with this, and it is a big. Fleming evidently, young Ian, when he was much younger than he is today, had a penchant for reading Sax Romner and reading the Fu Manchu books, and he's a big fan of them. And I think that this is really filtered through in this particular work, because we get to Crab Key, lots of things happen that we're doubtless going to discuss, but there are some great moments as this adventure progressed. You know,
it's funny you mentioned Live and Let Die, David, because there's a couple of things in this which are flashbacks, which I don't think we'd really seen before. And he talked about the submarine path he had taken to the Isle of Surprise. It sometimes came back to him in nightmares, and that's from Live and Let Die. So he's tying it back to that novel. And then also he remembers Solitaire. He thinks a little bit for a moment about Solitaire, so recalling a past heroine.
Yeah, I mean, the Jamaica setting brings it all back for him, I think. And yeah, I think that we're seeing really two different types of Bond novels emerging. You know, you have the noir epic that was Casino Royale, the gambling book, very dark, very tough story. Then with Live and Let Die, the whole thing opens up into Technicolor, and we see more adventurous space in that one. Moonraker, he even manages to succeed in making Dover sound very glamorous. And so it goes, you know. Diamonds Are Forever. Diamonds Are Forever. I think we all agreed was a bit of a mishmash, perhaps not his finest hour. From Russia with Love, we were all tremendously impressed with, but that was very much an Ambler-esque spy story, you know.
Ian's love for Jamaica is almost on every page, though, isn't it? You know,
it is, yeah.
The land of hills and rivers.
Yes.
The Arawak Indians called it, you know, Jamaica. You know,
it is a love letter to Jamaica, really. I think the way he describes it. And you mentioned Quarrel's fitness plan, so we don't get the cigarette allocation on this one as we did previously. But the fitness plan was up at 7, swim a quarter of a mile, breakfast, an hour sunbathing, run a mile, swim again, lunch, sleep, sunbathe, swim a mile, hot bath and massage, dinner, and asleep by 9. And then the best bit, this is the bit of this plan that I really like and I can get on board with. Bond then goes to the icebox and took a pint of Canadian Club blended rye. So important to have a pint of whiskey along with this Quarrel fitness plan.
I don't know what Ian's Red Indians, his former Red Indians that are mooching around town think to that training regime, do you?
Well, it can't all be doom and gloom. I think that's the message.
So let's chat about Dr. No, the villain. How was he for you, Andy?
Well, very vivid. His physical alterations is explained that in his backstory he's actually German Chinese, isn't he? And his backstory of getting on the wrong side of the Tongs, the Chinese mafia, and thus his need to completely alter his appearance, stretching his cranium and so forth, and various plastic surgeries. The loss of his hands that are replaced by pincers, and the classic criminal intellect that David mentioned related to Fu Manchu. But what a name, and what a title. Ian really trots out these rhythmic syllabic titles with aplomb, doesn't he? Dr. No. I mean, and the double edge of it, obviously, no, but then obviously the Chinese aspect. So, but it was so, I don't know about you, but in the last book, it was a long time before we actually saw Bond. In this book, we heard a lot about Dr. No before we actually saw him, didn't we? Were we getting a little bit, where is he, or how was that for you guys?
First of all, I had to go to the dictionary, I must confess, and find out what guano was. I'd never come across guano. Bird droppings.
Big money in bird poo.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I had to do when we were told about him and his enterprises on Crab Key.
Yeah, you can use it's an ingredient for gunpowder as well as basic fertilizer. So yeah,
good cover story though.
I think that the build-up to meeting Dr. No, I thought was absolutely fantastic. I mean, from the moment they land on Crab Key, pardon me, you've got this amazing moment where we meet HoneyChile Rider. We meet the love interest, and she comes out of the sea naked in all of her glory, with just a knife belt around her waist, and immediately the love interest has arrived with this stunning woman, accepting, of course, from which is pointed out virtually immediately in the description, her broken nose, which Bond seems to obsess about a little bit. But
as does she, in a way, David, because if I remember rightly, when she first comes across him and startled, like she covers her crotch and her broken nose.
yes. Instead
of the obvious.
That's right. And then, of course, when Quarrel, Bond, and HoneyChile get together, virtually immediately one of Dr. No's henchmen, or more than one of their henchmen, come to sort of strafe them from the boat with the machine gun, which was quite a stunning moment of action, I thought, and force them together immediately to rely on each other as a team. And they start as part of this investigation, because Bond is determined to get information on Dr. No before he returns, and in his words, comes back through the front door with the military to confront this man. They set off on this march through the mangroves, and that is exceptionally well described. I mean, it's a fantastic piece of writing. When they have to, and when they're being followed by Dr. No's henchmen with the dogs, and they're obliged to go into the water, cut bamboo reeds to make makeshift snorkels so they can hide under the water. I mean, this is all phenomenal stuff. It's really quite amazing. And then, of course, when we think that they've escaped the pursuers, there's one that's following behind. Excuse me, sweeping up to make sure that they've searched correctly. And of course, Bond's obliged to kill him, which is a very sort of sudden moment. And
did you sort of on that? I had my doubts about that, really, because, you know, coming back to Major Boothroyd at the beginning, he's given him the big Smith and Wesson, and he's given him the Walter PPK. But I'm being picky, overly critical, but I would have thought it would have been far better for Bond to use something sharp and pointy, because they've been pursued through that swamp, and then he's let off with the big, you know, it's you know, we're here sort of thing, you know. So that's just my little bit of a thing on that, you know. But maybe in Ian's from Ian's point of view, as a desk man and as a gentleman, it's probably a little bit too vicious for Bond to just pull a knife out and slit somebody's throat.
Well, he did acquit Bond with a knife.
Yeah.
But what I found a little, maybe I misread, and you can correct me if I did. I don't know, how did he keep the gun dry?
Well, that's another question, isn't it?
The water.
Yeah, and David, you were in the commandos during the war. I mean, Andy and I were in the catering corps, so they didn't really trust us with any guns. But I also thought that. How's he kept this dry?
I was just a clerk. I didn't know anything.
Right. Whatever.
How was it kept? No, but I mean, it was just something that passed through my mind. But in a way, when you have these moments in Fleming's books, there is such a narrative drive that you just move through it, you know, and you just accept it must have been you that's misunderstood or something, and on they go with the next project. But of course, sadly, after that, we had the big confrontation with this dragon.
Yeah,
Thought that was really a fantastic development. Evidently, it came about because Ian was on a safari with his good friend Ivor Bryce in the Bahamas when they were researching for a film script that Ian was actually writing. And they were chauffeured in part through the swamps on this safari in this dune buggy, which Fleming has obviously captured Fleming's imagination, and he's had it equipped with a flamethrower, and it then becomes a dragon. And of course, both the girl and Quarrel are alluding to the existence of this dragon from time to time. And Bond is completely dismissing it as nonsense, you know, let's just get on with this, that there is no dragon, etc. But unfortunately, the dragon does appear, and the dragon takes Quarrel, which is...
you know, and we've seen the footage on newsreels at the cinema of in the Pacific War, the US Marines using such weapons to clear foliage. And it's a bit of an ambiguity in terms of the Geneva Convention, because it's an anti-foliage tool. But, you know, if you get in the way of it, it's an absolutely appalling way to die, isn't it? And
so he dies a very, very bad death. And but, you know, being the consummate professional, Bond is obliged to move on. And moving on ultimately consists of them being detained by the henchmen of this mysterious Dr. No. But when they are taken to Dr. No's lair, and the lair turns into a lap of luxury, it is a phenomenal piece of writing.
And he uses the name Bryce, doesn't he?
Yes, I think he does. Yeah,
He says
yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Bryce.
Yes, he does. Yes, he
again, because he did that in Diamonds Are Forever, didn't he? He used the name Bryce, so that keeps coming back.
Yeah, he invented it as a pseudonym, as a cover name, if you like.
Yeah.
So they go into this lair, and it's under the sea. And the way that he describes the furnishings, the whole sort of ambience of it is really sort of quite spectacular. So here you are in the villain's lair. It's the lap of luxury.
And it's pure imagination, isn't it, David? Because
pure imagination.
You know, the way he's got this glass marine observation window that magnifies the fish that swim past. I mean, maybe he's been to an aquarium and he's obviously considered that, but the design concept decorative awareness that he shows is describing the colours, the furnishings, the lighting. Really, I mean, who knows if this stuff will ever be portrayed on the screen? But what a challenge to come up with this in Technicolor. What a feast that will be, should it ever happen? You know.
Yes.
And Ian being Ian, you know, this luxury lair has florist lime bath essence.
Oh.
Well, what else would you find there?
Exactly. I mean, I can't afford the stuff myself, but Bond's very happy to find that.
It's entirely necessary. Yeah. No, everything is described in minute detail, and it's really that sort of descriptive prowess that really sets, I think, Ian apart from his compatriots in this game.
And what's really interesting in this lair is Honey Rider is flirting constantly with Bond, and he's kind of like, I don't have time for this. I've got to figure out how the heck we get out of here. And she keeps flirting with him, and she's a very attractive lady. That
not tonight, Josephine.
Yeah, constantly, right? And this is not like Bond to send a woman away.
No, I have more. Yeah, I have more important things to do. That's his message. And then, of course, when they are invited to the dinner, you have this phenomenal scenario and this dialogue between. Well,
before you get there, though, David, before you get there, wasn't that a creepy scene where they're both asleep and Dr. No comes in and, like, with his pincers pulls the bedclothes back on Honey and has a good old look?
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of the reason why Bond didn't really give into his thing? Because he knew he's in a goldfish bowl, he's under observation, he's in I don't know what the term is, like a gilded cage, if you like.
Might be.
And, the last thing he's going to do is put on a show for Dr. No,
Which says a lot about his personality, because personally speaking, if I was in that situation with a hot woman like that and I know it's going to be curtains, I'd probably have a go. Might be the last time. So obviously I'm no James Bond, we know. So then we go to the dinner, David. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I think when we met, you're right. He first appears when they are both asleep, when they've been drugged. But then when they actually arrive at the dinner for the meeting, I think that's when we get the big description of him.
Yes.
I mean, 6'4", with this inverted teardrop of a head, and with two claws in place of his hands. I mean, this is really Sax Romner territory. This is really Fu Manchu stuff.
Yeah, he actually describes him as the bizarre gliding figure, looked like a giant venomous worm wrapped in grey tinfoil. And Bond would not have been surprised to see the rest of it trailing slimely along the carpet behind.
Oh, I mean, it sends shivers down your spine. You know, there's no doubt about who is the evil one in all of this.
Yeah,
and he doesn't. He's in total control, isn't he? Because he's got Bond there, and they're almost fascinated with one another, aren't they? You know, Dr. No is fascinated with Bond, and Bond, as we will find out, is all part of his. He sees him really as an experiment, doesn't he?
Yes.
Whereas Bond is like, you know, I'm going to get out of here, and if not, you know, I'm basically going to kill you.
Yes.
You know, but he doesn't. Dr. No doesn't really. He just is in total control, isn't he? He doesn't see the threat. He's like, I'm gonna have some. I'm playing with this guy. I'm gonna have some fun with him, and then he's going to be killed like all the rest, and I'm going to carry on with what I'm doing. Is that not Dr. No's perspective on all this?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean,
because others have been and others have died, haven't they?
Well, he does write that I guessed that the fly would come to the spider. I was ready for you when the canoe showed up. So it is almost like playing with him.
Yeah.
Well, Bond endeavours to persuade him, of course, that help's on its way.
Yeah.
Everybody knew where he was going, and then when he hadn't called in, you know, the troops will be arriving, and help is just around the corner. And Dr. No's not having a bit of it. You know, he says, you know, this is a piece of nonsense. It's not how the Secret Service work. You know,
that's right. Yeah. He says, you know, nice try, doesn't he? You know,
I mean, he explains completely his raison d'être and how he's making money from the guano,
and that he's working with those Russians, right, to interfere with the radio signals for the missiles of Turk's Island. So
the rocket interdiction, and that's the guano. Here is the big story, isn't it? That Ian's pushing. He hasn't really pushed the rocket interdiction much, has he? That's almost like a side issue, isn't it?
Yes, I mean it's virtually like he was carried away with this fantastic enterprise that Dr. No was involved with selling this guano dung and so on and so forth. And then he thought, hey, I'm writing a spy story here. I better get the Russians in, you know?
Yeah.
I virtually thought that the sort of rocket interference was a bit of a bolt-on, you know? But nonetheless, you know, we're all so carried away with Ian's prowess, or at least I am, that we just turn the page. I mean,
it did work for me, though, that storyline, because, you know, you got the guano thing as the front, and then he's trying to scare people off because, you know, he's not doing anything wrong mining for guano or whatever, but, you know, obviously his work with the Soviets is. So I think it worked to kind of explain why he has the dragon and he doesn't want people on the island. Audubon Society, etc.
But coming back to the origins of the story, or the beginning of the story, where what happens to Strangeways and True Blood, basically they're not really. They really don't understand what they're messing with, do they? M is more concerned with Strangeways running off with True Blood than he is that the place has been incinerated. The safe was left open, which is where all the ciphers were. They don't know what they're dealing with, do they?
And the governor doesn't want to know either, does he?
The government, nobody wants to know. And poor old Bond is out there. He's like you say, he's gone right into the middle of this web, and they've no idea. You know, M was just concerned with Strangeways. Randy old sod has run off with True Blood, and don't you think that Strangeways, just to digress a little bit, is like a future projection of Bond himself? You know, that's Bond in 15 years as a station chief somewhere else, still an active swordsman.
Yeah.
Playing cards.
But there are moments of this finale where you're not sure if Bond's going to make it because
No.
Oh,
I mean, Dr.
That
No
is
says,
tension.
yeah, I mean, so they have this lovely dinner and you're kind of wondering, like, where's this going to go? You've got Dr. No explaining, as you say, his raison d'etre, you know, what nefarious scheme he's up to. And then he says, I'm interested in pain. I'm also interested in finding out how much the human body can endure. From time to time, I make experiments on those of my people who have to be punished. You see, Mr. Bond, I have just finished constructing an obstacle race, an assault course against death. So he's gone from being this supervillain now to being a sadomasochist, which adds makes him even more chilling.
Yes.
And the tension in where Bond is in those the tunnel, it's getting hot. His hands are burning. He doesn't. You're literally there, aren't you? You know what? Yeah. What can I put? I can't lay on it. I can't kneel on it. I can't. You know.
Well, I think when we get into this course, I don't know how you would describe it. This project that Dr. No has put together. This test of successive tortures that he's putting Bond through.
It's like a sadistic assault course, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, but the writing. I mean, it's one of the longest action set pieces that I've ever read, and I think that the writing's off the Richter scale.
You're really there in there with
the way he describes Bond's pain at every verse and turn. I mean. You know, all of the different things from the electric shock at the beginning to
the spiders.
The spiders that he has to navigate across.
But what I liked about this, David, was, okay, it was fantastical, but there was one or two moments where Bond has a word with himself and you get to find out or discover more about the inner workings of his mentality. He says, these were hurts that an accident ward would sneer at. Get on, you bastard. And he's winding himself up saying, look, you know, if I walked into a hospital with this, I'll disband it. And it's that, you know, that self-reliance and how, you know, he's got to have his mental game as well as his physical one to get through this. And I really loved that part.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're 100% right.
Because No basically says you're going to die. It's just a question of when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's, you know, he's under mortal threat. You know, you really, for me, that tension, that like David says, that was the part that really ramped up for me.
Yeah.
More than any other, that was the real suspenseful part of the book.
Because you were also wondering, like, well, what's around the corner? He's getting through this heat. What's next for him? So there was that anticipation. Yeah. Maybe I'm a sadomasochist reading this because I want to know what pain's coming next.
And then he sees Dr. No peering at him through the thing, doesn't he? Yeah. It's like an observation panel. Yeah. He sees Dr. No looking at him, which, to be honest, probably spurred him on more to survive, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the hand of evil is ever present, you know? But again, that's another, you know, Sax-Romner trait. That's another... with the villain looking on, you know, and playing with the hero and so on. This is very much a Sax-Romner.
So the climax of that, right? So he falls into the water and he has a fight with a giant squid. I mean, how was that for you?
I thought it was blood curdling.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fantastic. Probably couldn't happen in real life. I don't know how many giant squids there are.
You didn't fight any of those in your commando days, David?
No, I can't say that I ever did. No, right. I never did. Yeah. But you know, again, Fleming's narrative prowess just takes you there, and it was a horrific fight to the death.
Yeah.
With Bond, with our hero triumphing.
I think he had trouble with the knife again on that though, didn't he? Because he said he put the knife between his teeth and he dived off the.
Yes.
And then it was changing between his teeth or in his,
Yeah.
you know, there's a little bit lost in translation there.
Yeah. But I think he comes across as being a very fallible hero as well throughout all of this, you know, which is what makes it interesting. I mean, he's not a cardboard sort of cutout character.
And HoneyChile plays her part. She sort of disappears, doesn't she? But then she reappears and aids his escape, doesn't she?
Well, that's in the background, though. He's trying to get through this assault course, and he knows because Dr. No has tied her to this rock where there are these crabs.
That's right,
that will run over the body and eat the body. So all this time, he's like, I need to get out of here because she's tied to that rock.
Yeah.
And I need to get Dr. No. I mean, you know, I really felt that pressure as he was trying to survive the assault course.
Yeah.
What a gruesome way for someone to go as well with the crabs. And he talks about, because there's that really, it's quite scary. He says, I've been waiting for a white woman to experiment with, because the previous prisoner had died. And he's like, well, I want to know if you can, who was a local. And he's like, I wonder if a white person will last long. What's going on? This guy's just such a maniac. But then when Bond gets out, he sorts the squid out. And then again, where does he summon this energy from? Because then he's got to climb up a crane and take out the crane operator.
Yeah.
After going through all this, clearly the Quarrel fitness plan with the pint of blended rye, it has worked for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what a fitting death for Dr. No.
Indeed, yes, to be suffocated with
bullshit.
Yeah.
And then actually, when he does find HoneyChile, she's kind of escaped herself. You know, she's done her stuff, and you know, she hasn't been eaten alive by these crabs, and you know, she's wanting to find a way out of here with Bond.
Because
do you find that with really HoneyChile and then going back to Miss Case, probably the two most vivid femme fatale we've had, that they're both very, Ian's written them very vernacular to the story, hasn't he? So with Miss Case, she was very urban, wasn't she? She was a city slicker, razor sharp.
Yes.
And then with HoneyChile, she's the child of nature. And again, Ian's love of nature. Well, I've heard that she may be based a little bit on Blanche. That's so, David, who he goes swimming with, Blanche.
One way of putting it.
Blackwell.
Well, could be, but the name, evidently, the name HoneyChile, he took that from one of his associates' wife's nickname.
Right.
A lady called Patricia Wilder, who evidently in Ian's circles is called HoneyChile. And Patricia Wilder, evidently in her day, was a lively former showgirl, and she actually performed in Bob Hope's troupe. So he's drawing on things. I think it was interesting actually that he used Blanche Blackwell's name for as the name of the ship.
That's right, at the end, isn't it?
At the end, yes. He calls the ship Blanche, but no doubt that's named after Miss Blackwell. And of course, rumors abound about Ian and Miss Blackwell. So
right,
plot thickens.
Because she's like aristocracy, the sort of Jamaican aristocracy, is she not?
Evidently so. Evidently.
Yeah. The other thing, it's interesting you mentioned Tiffany Case, because the other thing they both have in common is they were both raped.
Yes.
And we haven't really gone into Honey Rider's backstory, but she was very good with animals, and she was often this bit does me, but walking around with snakes and all these wild creatures, and people would give her a wide berth, and that comes back into play of how she escapes, because she understands nature, she understands animals. She's like, as long as I don't move, these crabs are not going to bother me. Whereas I'm guessing that the previous captain was probably screaming and shouting, as we all would. and that's why they attack Anita, but that didn't happen to Honey Rider. So that was interesting. And then of course, that's not the end of it. They have to escape, and there is a line.
Yeah, but just to go on that point, talk about with HoneyChile, and I think, with the exception of when I think about all of Bond's love interests, with the exception of Gala Brand in Moonraker, they've all been women with one wing broken.
Yes,
they've all been damsels in distress that have needed some nurturing from Bond, some help from Bond, and he really is attracted to women that need his help, and so on and so forth. It's really interesting. It's an interesting dynamic that seems.
And with HoneyChile, we sort of got like a 2-page backstory, which was very interesting. The fact that the nose was broken by slavers, because HoneyChile is a white Jamaican.
Yes,
but there were slavers who attacked her, broke her nose, and so forth.
Yes, yeah.
And also the story of revenge.
But with Miss Case, we found out, we kind of found out more as we went along. Whereas I almost felt that HoneyChile was a little bit underutilized here. She's so interested in selling us her seashells on the seashore and all that, that I just maybe would have liked to have seen her utilized a little bit more.
I don't know, though, because you've also got the story of then how she kills the rapist.
Yeah.
So you do have this. She's not one-dimensional.
No,
but I think
she's naive, because then she says that she wants to go to New York, have the operation on her nose, and become a call girl.
That's right.
And Bond tries to talk
and
her
she
out
also
of that.
says, doesn't she, that we as you said, Shane, she was attacked, she was violated, but she's not actually sure because they knocked her unconscious, and she thinks that's what happened. So she's certainly she's virtuous, so yes, shows some depth really from Ian, there, I think.
And also when she shows them about the the bamboo reeds and how to hide. So I think she plays a good role in this. And I think that there was that scene. So when they escape and there are still some guards left, and Fleming writes, Bond knew he wasn't going to like this, killing again in cold blood. But these men would be the Chinese Negro gangsters, the strong-armed guards who did the dirty work. They would certainly be murderers. So, he's having to justify it in his head. I got to take these guys out, but they're wrong uns.
It's them or us.
Yeah.
And it's he states at the beginning of the book, the sect. We've had the Spang boys before, the gay gangsters.
Yes.
And we had the Soviets last time, and now we've got the Chinese Jamaicans.
Yes.
This particular group of Chinese Jamaicans that are enthralled to Dr. No.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting, really.
Yeah.
I think as we start to wrap up here, I think my favorite line from the book was the message that Bond sends at the end of this adventure to London, saying, regret, must again request sick leave, stop. Surgeon's report follows, stop. Kindly inform armourer Smith & Wesson ineffective against flamethrower, end it. He's having a right pop there, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did this stack up for you, Andy? In compare it with the previous Bonds, how was this one for you?
Well, I mean, the previous one, it absolutely game changer, walloped it out the park, and I think it's an interesting sidestep to take us into Jamaica, to really give us the travelogue, to explain fully. I mean, one of the characters here played L. Smith, the colonial secretary. He gives a good but narrow explanation even about what I just spoke about earlier, the different range, the diversity of Jamaica, the island of Jamaica. So I really enjoyed finding out a lot about Jamaica in this one. Unlike David, I thought that once they got into the mangrove swamps and all that, it lost energy a little bit for me, if I'm perfectly honest. But I think it's a very worthy addition to the canon. Great title. I'm not sure about this cover though. I mean, has he fallen out with Chopping?
Well, I was asking around about that actually, and evidently, and I suppose if you think about it, it's true of all of the books that we've got on our shelves right now. The trend has always been for a new illustrator to do each cover separately so that they're all seen as sort of different and better. And I think with the Chopping cover, we saw something that was really special, that was more of a branding of Bond.
Yeah.
And it really elevated the sort of physical form of the book to be a luxury product.
And now he's stepped back again.
Yes, and now he's stepped back. And this cover is evidently done by Pat Marriott. And he is the artist that did Diamonds Are Forever. So he's playing around a little bit, but I think I heard on the grapevine that he is really interested in pursuing this idea of having consistency with his artwork, and that he's told Kate that this is what he wants to do. And he's having discussions as we speak with. So
maybe in the next edition, Chopping we'll have another go at it.
I think we could well see the return of Chopping without doubt. But it is interesting that. But that's the explanation, evidently. Because at the moment, considered wisdom is to have a different cover with each book. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's an evolution, isn't it? But I mean, what about Bond's Life Deluxe, David? I mean, we've got Sea Island Shorts, the old dark blue tropical warstead, and the acting governor, who, he even, the acting governor, my goodness me, he wears a spotted bow tie. I mean, Ian's put a bit more of himself in there, hasn't he?
Yes, I mean, the Life Deluxe continues, and there's been some discussion about from Fleming's critics saying that he's turning this into a merchandising opportunity and what have you, and of course Ian rightly says, and I think it's very true, that we have brands in our houses, within our lives, and it's much more authentic to refer to the brand than it is to refer to the item. Putting on your Flores is better than just putting on your aftershave. Is his explanation, and I think he's right in that, because it sort of personalizes everything, and again, it's part of what gives his novels that unique feel.
But that's also balanced now with Ian's love of the environment, isn't it?
Yes.
Love of nature, his love of the countryside. Yes. Nobody talk. We're hearing this criticism about sadism and violence and sex and all that, but there's what about his love of the environment and so forth? Nobody's seeing that side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But just to go on this critic that seems to have reared his head and is probably quite unwelcome. I mean, we've seen before the book was even published this article in a New Statesman by Paul Johnson that dismisses the whole thing as sex, snobbery, and violence. And I think that's very unfair. There's a hell of a lot more to it than that. And it's interesting that the Times have actually employed Raymond Chandler to write about Fleming's work in general and Dr. No in particular. And Chandler's article is very insightful because he really says that there are three things that set Fleming apart. And one being Fleming's willingness to escape from conventional Mandarin English, which I think is very true. It's true of the way that his characters speak, but it's also true of the way that his villains speak, the love interest speaks, and so on and so forth. And that's really sets Fleming apart. And I also think that he has a daring sense of place, which is true. And that's something that, again, Chandler picks up on in his article. And the other thing that Chandler says in his article as well, that he credits Fleming with having an acute sense of pace. And I think that that's been omnipresent in every book that we've read so far from Ian, you know? So we're on to something quite special, I think, here.
Is there more to come?
Six.
Is there more to come?
Evidently so. The boy's been in Jamaica and he's been busy again. And yes, I think we'll be back here next year, same time, same place, discussing his latest epistle. But what's also very interesting as well, because Ian's been industrious from the get-go and he's been desperate to see Bond get on the screen. And evidently has negotiated a promising film offer with United Artists, where they've offered him $3,000 for the option and $30,000 if the movie gets made. So I think Ian is clearly interested in.
And is it going to be one of these six, David, or is it going to be something new?
Well, it seems like Dr. No is the one that sparked the imagination of United Artists, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what they do with that giant squid, eh?
Yes, indeed. Indeed, that centipede.
So if they do film it, then let's have a bit of fun. I mean, who plays James Bond? Which actor do we think would play James Bond? Because
I think Richard Todd would do it well.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Is he a little bit too old? I don't know.
James Mason, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, he would make a very good.
I saw that fellow, first time I'd seen him, he was in Ivanhoe. They just aired that earlier this year. Roger Moore, young British actor. He's got the look of James Bond to me.
Have you seen him running, though?
I think he looks a little ridiculous in that tin suit. We can't possibly.
Yeah, but you get him out of that into his tailored suit.
Let's keep the conversation serious, Shane. I mean, we're not going to have a toy soldier as James Bond. I mean, it could be David Niven.
David Niven. Now you're talking.
Yes, I would vote for David Niven. But anyway, we shall see. And evidently, the other thing that's interesting as well is that Ian has kept the TV rights. He's bought them back. And after the complete debacle of Casino Royale, with our American brethren turning him into Jimmy Bond and not all the rest of it, you know, it's a good job he's got that one sorted out. But no, I think there's much to look forward to. But it's going to be interesting to see what path he takes with the next one. Is he going to return to the hard-nosed, Ambler-esque spy thriller that was From Russia with Love, or are we going to stay on this more fantastical track? It will be interesting to see.
I hope he goes back to something a bit more realistic. I did have issues with this book. It was a decent read. It was a men's adventure thriller, but that second half of the book, I did struggle with. So I'm hoping that he returns to his roots, but, we shall see.
You didn't enjoy the second part?
Not so much. I mean, the assault course, I liked finding out the inner workings of his mentality and his self-talk and all. I did like that piece, but And even the killing of Dr. No, I wanted to see that bastard squirm. You know, I think dumping the guano on it, okay, I get it. But I wanted to see him die a gruesome death, personally.
He doesn't sort of get too descriptive, does he?
No.
On considering that he's been done for, or people have said that he's into sadism, he doesn't. You know, he could have been a lot more descriptive, really, about the agonies that Quarrel went through on the end of a burning kerosene. You know, and even like you say, Dr. No, the agonies that he went breathing in toxic bird dong, you know. So he just skip a little bit over. Maybe he drew back since the carpet beater got introduced. It probably made him tone it down a little, you know.
I don't think he's turned it down with regard to Bond. I think it's Bond that bears the brunt of the sadism.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Bond has really had a very tough time in all of these books. And
well, you can imagine him, David, in the assault course thinking, here I am struggling, you know, what was it he said, like wriggling like a caterpillar climbing up to the bath plug, and meanwhile M thinks he's sunning himself drinking, you know, cocktails in Jamaica and having a good holiday.
Yes.
So
interesting to see how that relationship develops.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the next one. Well, gentlemen, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I have to cut this short because I've just got my ferry tickets to go over to Sweden because the 1958 World Cup, right? So
That's
Wales
right.
are there. Big tournament, and I'm confident that Wales will be a powerhouse in world football for many years to come. So I'm excited to go across to Sweden for that.
Up the Dragons.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
Great. Have a great game.
Thanks for listening to the Spybrary podcast. You don't have to wait for the next episode. Join the conversation happening now at facebook.com/Spybrary and on Twitter @Spybrary.